Hi folks, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and today we're taking a look at the Finn Wolf by Cold Steel, their folding knife Scandinavian grind blade. They've got basically the same knife in a fixed blade, kind of like a Mora knife competitor. That one's made with 4116 stainless steel, which is a good budget steel. This guy is made with AUS 8. Well, AUS 8A is what it says on there. Made in Taiwan. Triad. I almost was saying Trident. A Triad lock right there. It's a lockback knife. Graphics handle. Thumb studs. It's actually a good user for, doing bushcraft style work. Triad locks are usually very good, and this one's no exception. Handle's mostly comfortable. This seam on the inside here, round off those edges just a little bit. I've recorded the intro after, and I forgot to talk about that in the video. It can get a little bit sharp on the hand, especially if you don't use knives all the time. Wasn't that bad for me, but I'm sure some people find this edge right here a little bit sharp. If you're gripping it really tight and doing some harder work, after a while, your fingers along here are going to feel like they're irritated a bit. There's other concerns with this knife too, very small ones, some good pluses. It's not a very expensive knife at all. I got mine from White Mountain Knives. You can too. They've got most of the colors in stock. Of course, you can buy it in Canada at a place like Blades Canada. But I get most of my knives from White Mountain Knives. And you can save 10% with coupon code CCE when you shop there. I'll put links down below for those stores. Amazon's got it as well. I'll put links for that. You can use my links whenever you shop at Amazon for anything. Use my links to get started, and it's a great way to support the channel without it costing you a penny. And just before we go to the tabletop, I'll show you what other colors this comes in. So we've got a blade stock that's very close to 1/8 of an inch thick. And we've got that Scandinavian grind from the tip all the way down. It's very close to 11 degrees per side when I measured it. It's a straight back. Let's see, I've got a ruler right here, don't I? So if we put it on a ruler, you can see it is a straight back, a very, very tiny bit of a dip right at the tip. So the tip is really good for, digging into stuff. And we've got a little long belly right here. You can actually use a Scandinavian grind knife like this to even skin an animal if you needed to. And so it's got a nice abrupt belly, a quick belly. And then we've got a long straight edge here. Quite good for cutting. Since it's 11 degrees per side, this is more shallow than most kitchen knives. The thing is, kitchen knives look like they're skinnier because, after just a tiny bit, then the main bevel is ground away as well. But the edge is very, very sharp on this knife. From the factory, it's one of the sharpest knives that I've had in a while, and that 11 degrees per side really makes it easy to cut through a lot of things, unless it's hard things that don't like to be pushed away, from, the sides of steel. They don't like to be pushed away that way. Those things are a little bit harder to cut. But even then, I did some whittling of some pine, actually it was spruce, wasn't it? A 2x4, and some other wood that I had out in the backyard. You could do some very precise, whittling with it. Not super precise, not like proper whittling knives, but still pretty good. Good enough to make basic wooden tools. You can tell that the thumb studs, they are the same on both sides. Unlike a lot of cold steel knives, they have one side of their thumb stud a whole lot smaller than the other. I don't like that because I grew up left-handed, but I'm very good with knives in my right hand. So I sometimes change knives around from hand to hand, and I want to be able to deploy the blade just as easily with my left hand as I do with my right. Whoops, I wasn't holding it right to start with. As I do with my right hand. And this deploys very well. If you've got the pivot screw tension properly. I did not adjust it until after I'd taken the knife apart, which I did just a few moments ago to take some images. It had no blade play side to side. There's a little bit of flex because the whole strength of this thing is this Gryvex, this fiber reinforced plastic that they have here. So yeah, there is going to be a little bit of flex back and forth, but it's not true play. The blade ends right here, so there's a little bit something like a sharpener's choil right there. That spot, that flat, it rests on, there's a pin. Let's use this. There's a pin right about here that you can't see on the outside. And that pin is the stop pin. When you close the knife, that part of the steel touches that pin. You might be able to just barely see it on this image. You can see that shiny thing right there. That's the pin that it comes down on. So that stops the cutting edge from hitting anything over here. So it's a good thing that it's there. So that's why you've got this shape. So do not watch my video on how to fix a sharpener's choil and then start grinding away on here, because then you're going to have the blade closing down onto, you know, the back spring, the other side of this piece of metal, and also the spring that holds the tension for the back spring. That you can see in there, that's the bit of black over there. When I take it apart, I'll show you the spring that they've got in here. There's a spring that goes from here up, and it pushes against the back lock over here, and there's the pivot point. So when you push this down here, that's the pivot point, like a teeter-totter. This comes up and it lets go so that the blade can go down. I can show you some still pictures right now on how that works. On the end of this lock bar, there's a bit of a tooth that pokes down, and there's a cutaway on the tang of the blade right here, and those two things come together. And so there's 3 points of contact. I think the image is this way on the screen. Lock bar goes in, and it pushes on the back of the tang of the blade. The blade also pushes on this stop pin, and the blade also pushes on the screw here. So 3 points of contact. Every locking knife has a minimum of 3 points of contact. Almost none of them have more than 3. But you have to have at least 3 points of contact to create solid lockup. Less than that is why you get blade play. Like if you get lock rock, where the knife blade can go up and down a little bit, that's because the 3 points of contact aren't all tight. One of them is loose. Blade play side to side is something different. That's when the pivot screw here is not tightened sufficiently, and that does that. So it's actually a very simple system. The lock back, the Triad lock, is just a slight adjustment on the older style lock back, and it works very, very well. The blade itself is under a little bit of tension. As you see, when I take the blade out, the spring here comes out a little bit. That's why it always wants to pull back in. This black spring back here, you can see it in this shot. That spring there is always pushing on the back of the lock bar, which means it's always pushing down there, which is why when we come out, that's pushing it away. And it's got a smooth surface on the bottom of that little tooth sticking out. That's why it can slide, and then when it finally goes up to the opening, it quickly jumps in and holds it tight. So good design. There's a tiny little insert of steel that has 3 little threaded holes. That's where these go in. And so that one piece of steel works both ways. You screw into it from this side or this side. That's one thing I don't like about this knife. I wish that this side was all smooth and didn't have this cutout here. I know, Jake is saying that. Jake is always saying he likes left-hand side, pocket clips as well as right. That's generally true. This is not the kind of knife that you're going to be taking out to fight somebody in a hurry. A Scandinavian grind folding knife, it's just not the kind of knife that you're going to do that with. I carried this in my left-hand pocket for half the time that I used it. It's just fine. You pull it out of your left pocket and you open the blade and you use it. You close it up, Put it in your left pocket, it's just fine. Do the same thing in your right pocket, it's just fine. Anyhow, I was talking about that. Next thing down here is the lanyard hole. It's effectively like a tube without putting a tube in there. I do wish that they would have chamfered these edges. The thing is, this is fiberglass reinforced plastic, which means paracord can start to fray on that sharp corner. And they could have easily just chamfered off those edges there and it would behave better. Wouldn't have been hard at all. Now we come to a tiny problem right here. Now, you can, if you take your finger and go in like this, you can get your finger across that tip of that blade. That's very rare. If you just push your thumb across this way, you can't get your thumb cut on that blade. But you can get little fingers if you get them just right, like with my pinky finger. My flesh can fit through there and then get caught behind the blade. That could be a problem. Also, when the knife blade is deployed, now those two things, its edges, they're a little bit sharp and they're sticking out. So you can kind of irritate yourself if you just grab it the wrong way like this or something and your finger goes on there. It's quite irritating. I wish they would have made this slightly different. If they would have brought this back end over, and instead of chamfering it off like this, if they would have brought it over and, taken it off like that, so this area here would also be filled with plastic, that would solve all of these problems. Just a tiny bit more of plastic would have fixed it. But no, they chamfered it off and created a problem area. Cold steel, I think you made a mistake. It would have been so easy to make it different. Does it look better like this? I think so. I think it looks better having this chamfered off. But is it better? I don't think so. I don't think it's better. Okay, let's talk about the screws. Good quality stainless steel screws. T10, a Torx T10 here, and Torx T6 here, and Torx T6 here. I really wish they would have done, since they seen the value of T10 here, I wish they would have done T8s over here. And maybe even here, maybe had two screws, two T8s instead of three T6s. T6s being so small, they tend to, get damaged and strip out easier than others. Let's go over the sizes, weights. 96 grams for this knife, 3.4 ounces. So that's a good weight for a full-size folder. The sharpness from the factory, 55 best. 200 and less is considered sharp. So 55, that is a sharp knife. Cutting edge length, 87.3 millimeters, 3.44 inches. Blade length, so tip to the closest spot of the Gravix, 84.3 millimeters, 3.32 inches. The blade thickness is 2.86 millimeters, which is 0.1125, so just under an eighth of an inch. The blade depth, it's actually wider here, and it very slightly goes narrower along the length of the blade. So at the heel, 25 millimeters, 0.98 inches. The thickness behind the grind, well, it's the blade length, because that grind is the same all the way along. Blade length, blade thickness, that's the thickness behind the grind. So it doesn't really apply for what I usually use the thickness behind the grind measurement for. Grind angles, I've already told you, very close to 11 degrees per side, so we're just going to say 11 degrees per side. Now, the handle length, 116.6 millimeters, which is 4.59 inches. The grip area between my thumbs there, it's just a bit under 10 centimeters, a little bit under 4 inches. Handle thickness now, not counting the pocket clip, 12.3 millimeters, 0.485 of an inch, so just under half of an inch. The handle depth within the grip area, so not back here, but within this grip area, it's biggest right about there, 29.1 millimeters, 1.15 inches. And then the knife depth when it's closed, and again, the biggest measurements back here, that is 35.1 millimeters, 1.38 inches. And the total length of the knife is 200 100.9 millimeters. Oh, I forgot to put inches. Inches is on the screen. So yeah, it's a pretty good knife. Oh, sorry guys, I usually put this on the screen. I forgot to, but I'm not going to redo it. I'm way behind schedule. I just had, my day just got away from me. I won't even get this out today. I usually have my editing almost done by this time, and I'm still recording. So what do I think of this knife? I like it. Pocket clip is not too bad. See how it's got a texture all over here? I would like to take that pocket clip off, and if I was keeping this one, if I do keep this, I will do it. I'll take some sandpaper, maybe my Dremel tool, and just make it a little bit smoother right beneath the pocket clip right there, just to make it a little bit easier to slide in and out of a pocket. So let's demonstrate that, since I didn't do it earlier. Wants to climb over most pockets. You could bend that up if you need to. And it has a tough time getting over that at the beginning. And that's because you've got pressure on some texture. So that's why, you know, companies like Spyderco, they've got a lot of FRN stuff. They make a smooth patch where they've got their logo just underneath that point. That'd be a good idea for cold steel to do as well. AUS 8 is quite good. One of the things it's really high in is chromium, so it's very corrosion resistant. It's reasonably hard, 58, 59 on the Rockwell scale usually, so that's not like a super budget steel. It's a decent steel. I like AUS 10 quite a bit more than AUS 8, but for the price of this knife, it's not bad at all. So thanks for watching my video. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.